Hello fellow sim racers, and welcome to the 20,000 subscriber celebration video where I'm going to be answering the questions you asked a few weeks ago when I set this whole premise up. First of all, I guess I have to get the thank yous out of the way because, as it was pointed out to me earlier today, this time last year I had 1,000 subscribers and I was very happy with that. The channel's only been going for about 18 months, so this is frankly crazy. So thank you to everyone that's ever watched a video, subscribed, hit the like button and all those pretentious YouTube things. It really does matter. That's why YouTubers say that crap all the time. It's because that sort of engagement really does drive this thing forward. So I'm incredibly thankful that you guys constantly come and watch the videos and interact and hang out in the comments, and particularly those who I form friendships with. So anyway, I'm gonna move past all of that because we don't need a big long sappy intro. Basically, the format of this is going to be, there were sort of 70 odd questions that you guys asked a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to take questions from chat as I go. I try and keep on top of all of it, but generally this sort of thing descends into chaos pretty quickly. So I'm going to start with something from the YouTube list, just because I think the chat's about 20 seconds behind. I think that's one of the downsides of streaming in 1440p, is that the ingest server takes a little bit of time to catch up. So I'm going to start with a nice, oh man, it's not an easy one. All right, we'll do it anyway. We'll stick with it, and then I'll turn to chat and answer some of your questions there. I can see a load of stuff rolling in already. Wow, that's loads. Thanks, guys. I will get to you guys in a minute. Okay, right. First up, Stereopter asks, if you could have a Frankenstein sim racing game, which you could pick the best features of each of the current racing sims you own, which game would you pick for a physics, graphics, weather, force feedback, AI, multiplayer, and for the sake of completeness, career mode? Okay, well that's a nice light, easy one, isn't it? Okay, well let's start with physics. I'd be tempted to say R Factor 2, and in fact I'm going to say R Factor 2, but with the premise that since this is my world, R Factor 2 doesn't come with the limitations that sometimes trip people up with it, where you need so much real-world data to be able to plug into the model that sometimes you can't make realistic cars in it because you don't happen to know something really, really specific that a manufacturer or a tyre supplier, for example, would be able to provide. Graphics, again, that's got to be between ACC and Project Cars 2. I think I'd lean on Project Cars 2 because it's a little bit longer into its cycle, so it's a little bit better optimized at the moment. Weather engine, yeah, that's got to be ACC at the moment. Force feedback, I think ACC and Assetto Corsa. Well, here's a story for you guys if you haven't already heard it. Apologies to the guys that have heard me rant on about this. I've been told that I've been told by Kunos, in fact, that the force feedback engine in both ACC and Assetto Corsa is the same engine. It feels different because the data that's plugged into it's different. In ACC, there's a lot more suspension data, which is why you can feel more interaction between the tyre and the track, rather than some of the vibration type effects and stuff that were a little bit more prevalent in Assetto Corsa. That's my understanding anyway. Where do we get to? AI. Oh, they're all bad. They're all different kinds of bad. I think I picked the race room AI just because it's the raciest, if a bit punty. Multiplayer has to be iRacing. It's the best by miles. Career mode. Yeah, well, pick a Cody's game. Doesn't matter which one. They're all good. There we go. One question out of the way. Oh, thanks, Racing Sim Tools. That's thanks for the donation, man. That's really fucking cool. I'm already swearing. We're doing well. I should have had a few beers before I did this. Anyway, anyway, right. Do we have any questions in the chat yet? Oh man, that's a lot of stuff to get through already. That 20-second intro had more production value than any of my videos. Don't be hard on yourself, Zero Bandwidth. Your videos are great, man. Yeah, thanks to everyone that's saying hi and thank you and congratulations. That's already cool. I'm not going to shout out all of those just because we're never going to get through it. But thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate all of the support. So, oh god, Mike's question is exactly the same. Okay, let's see if there's any nuanced difference. What was the name? 2 questions from Mike. I can answer the first one. What was the name of that handsome man you had in your last Talking Sims episode? That was Jimmy Broadbent, Mike. But at the time you asked the question, it was Mike, SimRacing604, who has an excellent YouTube channel. If you could pick the 7 key elements, yeah, he's asked exactly the same question. Oh, that's a shame. I bet Mike asked it first. Mike's always really quick, which is good quality in a sim racer. When does Chris does iRacing come back? I was going to do that this week, and then I didn't. So really soon, I'm preparing for it. I think I've mentioned it on the channel before that when I go over to iRacing from other sims, it takes me maybe 3 or 4 days to really get into the iRacing headspace, just because all of the other sims feel like they're broadly coming at certain physics things and force feedback from the same direction, even though they differ. Whereas iRacing's got its own sort of feel, particularly on turning, that just takes me a little longer to get into. So I can't just jump from, say, Assetto Corsa or Race Room into iRacing and be anywhere near fast enough. Jimmy who? Oh, gluten-free, behave yourself. Rhino's Race Room, plan on doing any iRacing? Yeah, I've just answered that. But yeah, I'm going to be doing some more iRacing soon, man. Okay, right. So Doroya, I've already done that one. With 3 questions in, I'm already repeating myself. Emil Wimbo asks, outside of sim racing, what else do you enjoy doing? I used to be really into making music and photography and film and all of those sorts of things, but starting up a YouTube channel just eats all of your time. So I don't do a lot of that stuff anymore, sadly. I will do. You need time to step away from this, otherwise you end up, particularly if you're like me and work a job and run a YouTube channel, you end up doing some crazy long hours. So it's just nice to go and go play the guitar or just leave the house occasionally. That's really cool. R Factor. Am I going to be doing any? I did a couple of R Factor videos in the last couple of weeks, Rhino. With R Factor, it has to be a passion project. There has to be something that really appeals to me about doing an R Factor video, because the numbers just aren't there. If I do a video for an R Factor mod or a new piece of DLC, it gets half as many views as just a really run-of-the-mill Assetto Corsa video, and takes a lot longer to do as well. So I have to really be into the piece of content to want to do it. It's not something I really enjoy churning out. Also, RF2 is looking better, but it still doesn't look as good as some of the other sims. So for the types of video I make, sometimes it feels a bit like I'm having to work a bit harder to make the videos look the way I want. Oh wow, we have got so much going on in the chat. This is really cool, guys. Okay, Alderney Kingy. How do you get into sim racing? Like, seriously, I play on Xbox and I would say I'm pretty good, but how do I take my career to the next level? I was in the same situation as you. I'd been playing driving games for years and years and years and years, and I stopped for a long time. Then I picked up a PlayStation 4 and Assetto Corsa came out on it. And I realised that actually if I wanted to get the most out of this game, I was going to have to go back to the PC. And I know it sounds a bit snobbish, but that's kind of where you have to go. You've got 2 choices. There's a lot of seriousness in Gran Turismo. So being on consoles isn't so much of a problem. I don't think Forza's quite there in the competitive side of things yet. But really, most of the competitive sim racing and the serious, I don't like that word serious, but the kind of, I can't find a word that isn't a bit elitist, so I'm not going to use one. But that kind of thing is a bit more PC focused. So I would start there. You don't need a particularly high-end system if you're going to play titles like R Factor or iRacing or Assetto Corsa or even Race Room. The pretty mediocre hardware will get you most of the way. Assetto Corsa Competizione is kind of the outlier, and Project Cars 2 to some extent as well, where you need a pretty beefy graphics card to get the most out of them. But otherwise, yeah, no, you don't need to spend thousands. Right, moving on. Where did we get to? What's your dream sim rig and base? I think I'm getting there with what I've got, Nick, actually. The chassis I've got, which is the SimLabs Evo, it does everything I need it to. I can't really imagine needing anything bigger, stronger, unless you were going to go up to a full motion rig. And if anyone caught the video I did with Jimmy earlier in the week, we briefly touched on it, but I'm not a huge fan of motion rigs. They feel a bit, I don't like the word, but dampened. It feels a bit, physics is sort of getting in the way of those reaction times. Everything feels just a little bit out of time, and someone who's quite sensitive to lag and things like that, I find it a bit off-putting. So yeah, I'd really like to try out one of the new SimuCube direct drive wheelbases. I haven't tried one of them yet. The top end one looks like it's got some really good specs, but I'm using a SimuCube based OSW, so I sort of feel like I've got a lot of that experience anyway. So yeah, while my rig is sort of, it's not super high end, but it's not low end either. There's nothing really short of a really good gear shifter, a really good mechanical interlocking with a clutch gear shifter. That's what I'd like, but I think that's not practical at all. Right, so what's going on in the chat? You end up taking long I do end up taking long breaks, Dan, particularly between iRacing sessions. I looked at it earlier, and I think it's been like 6 months since I've done any iRacing, so I'm getting the most out of my subscription, clearly. R-Factor's UI is atrocious. I wonder when they'll come up with a new one. Well, yeah, they've been saying it's nearly ready for months. I agree. There's no point in sugarcoating it. The R-Factor UI is the worst of the lot. And racing sim UIs are pretty iffy at best anyway. So, Brasa asks, you're generally quite pleased with the mods and content you review. What's your biggest disappointment in terms of games, tracks, and cars in any sim? Right, yeah, okay, that's a really good point you make there. I only review stuff that I like. Now, that sounds like a bit of a weird journalistic cop-out, but I do this for fun. I run this channel not because I have to, not because I have some sort of editorial policy to meet. So when a piece of content comes out and someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I've made this mod of this car, would you like to review it on the channel? And I drive it and I think it's awful, I don't like it, then I'll just politely decline. So there is a huge bias in my reviews towards positivity, just because I don't want to put myself through 12 hours of video editing or whatever for something I don't like. Is stuff that's disappointment in terms of games and tracks and cars in any sim. There hasn't been that much stuff of the high profile stuff. I was a bit disappointed with some of the aspects of Project Cars 2. Although, I think we knew what to expect with that. And I would have liked Assetto Corsa Competizione to be a little bit more complete when it was first released. And, they're still fighting fires with a few bits of it now as well. But I certainly wouldn't say I was disappointed by it. I think overwhelmingly the majority of the game is incredibly positive. So I'm quite laid back about those last bits of polish being dealt with. I mean, if you're a triple screen racer, it sucks to be you guys, but I'm not anymore, so that doesn't really bother me. Anyway, first rule of sim racing: a rig's never done. There's always an upgrade. You'll nitpick and need. Yeah, I'd like a nicer shifter. I've been working on an updated rig tour, because the one that's on my channel gets a lot of views still, and almost everything about it's changed. So I thought I should probably update it. And yeah, the one thing I was looking at was like, yeah, I'd really like another H pattern, a better H pattern shifter. I'm still running the Thrustmaster TH8A, which is fine. It works really well, and for the price you pay for it, it's a great piece of kit. But with everything else on the rig being really solid and sort of professional feeling, it's a little bit out of sync with everything else. The problem I've got, it's not really a problem, but I don't feel like the Fanatic is enough of a jump up. So, and there aren't many products out in that space. So maybe when Huisingveld get around to releasing theirs, I'd definitely be up for that. So, right. Any more in the chat before I move on? 20,000 already. Scam. No, they are all 100% genuine subscribers. I've never paid to promote a piece of content. Not on YouTube. I have done in the past. I work in digital marketing, and I'm sort of well aware of once you start feeding the algorithms money, they start holding back a bit to get you to keep paying. Certainly that was the case with Facebook marketing, which I was involved in a few years ago. So I'm very against that. ALog shift is fantastic if you want a sequential. Yeah, I keep meaning to give one of them a try, Dan. I've got the, I don't know why I'm looking round, the Thrustmaster TSS handbrake and sequential. So the sequential side of things I've sort of got covered. I think the ALOGS one's probably going to be a bit better. Right, let's get some more questions from the YouTube. Where did I get to? Oh, here we go. Yeah, talking about ACC. Jonathan Young says, thanks, Chris. Good idea. Here's my question. ACC seems to have really divided the community, with some YouTubers in particular taking against it. But for those of us who race in ACC regularly, it's hard to play anything else because it feels next gen, with other sims feeling older. What's your view on ACC? In terms of driving experience, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed it since day one. A lot of the negativity that came out about the force feedback early on from some quarters, I didn't feel at the time, and that kind of confused me to the point where I actually reached out to Kunos and asked them what the deal with the force feedback was, and I touched on that a moment ago. So I'm a huge fan of the way ACC drives. As I said a moment ago, I was a little disappointed that when version 1 rolled around, there were some pretty, I won't say big issues, but there were lots of medium-sized issues. And I think that's largely down to the commercial reality of having to release the game when they had to. Don't forget, this is tied in with a real-world racing series. This isn't just Kunos releasing it because they've decided, we said we were going to put it out in May, so we'll put it out in May. I just don't think there was any ability to kick it down into the long grass and say, we'll just release it in the autumn when it's done. I don't know that for sure. I've not asked that question because I think it's a bit of a rude question to ask, but that's the sort of vibe I get. That being said, I think they're doing a great job of getting on top of all the issues, and as a single player experience, it's fantastic. As a multiplayer experience, it's gotten better and better. And I just think the driving experience in the car is really, really, really good at the moment. I couldn't be happier with it. Steve. We've got Steve Worrell in the chat. Congratulations on the milestone. Question is, what do you think the next big evolution or innovation in sim racing titles? For example, R-Factor 2 tyre model was a game changer. Yeah, interesting you mentioned the R-Factor 2 tyre model, Steve, because I think that's a good example of a sim maybe just going a little bit further with the purest goals, but it not actually working out all that well. I think it's quite well known that it's proved pretty tricky for the modding community, but speaking to some people that produce mods and produce paid content for various racing sims, the data's just not out there for people to build into the R-Factor 2 tyre model, and that's not just because they can't find that data, that's because the tyre manufacturers won't release that. So even if you've got a relationship like Kunos have with SRO, or you may even struggle there. So I didn't really answer your question. I just talked about the R-Factor 2 tyre model there, didn't I? What I think the next big innovation is, I think we're going to see more sims specialise. I don't think that's an innovation. I think that's just a trend. Assetto Corsa and Project Cars were great, but it's very difficult to go from driving one of the really honed cars in iRacing or Assetto Corsa Competizione and then go to one of the quickly churned out. That's really unfair. One of the pieces of content that was amongst a large plethora of other content in an Assetto Corsa or a Project Cars type game, 150 cars is insane. You're never going to get the same quality. You're never going to get the same accuracy. That's just a fact of life. So I think you're going to see more specialization because the sim racing world is big enough to support it. I mean, for Christ's sake, who'd have thought you'd get a Blancpain GT Series official game? That's nuts. I don't know what world we live in, but it's nuts. Oh wow, lots more in the chat. Try the new Arithmetic bushing for the THAA, makes the feel much better. It's cheap. Actually, yeah, I was looking at that earlier, Dan. I might just place an order. I think it's worth it. Get a video out of it as well. Who's your favourite member of the Discord, and why is it CJ? CJ gives me so much shit. It couldn't be CJ. I think it's Frank. He doesn't. I don't know if he even watches the videos. He just turned up one day, and turned up on chat, and has been causing havoc ever since. So yeah, if I had to pick a favourite, it's Frank, just because of the pure entertainment value that he brings to proceedings. Procrastinator says, remember when we were less than 300 subs, now 20k, you've earned every single one of them. Yeah, 300 subs feels like a really long time ago, but I remember being at Brands Hatch for the Blancpain GT last year and it ticking over 500 subs. I logged on to check my messages and I just saw 500 and I thought, wow, that's a massive number. So I have just no idea how any of that's happened. Sim Racing Tool says, the real question is how long can they afford to keep continuing development of ACC? I hope they keep going, but I could see funds drying up without new sales. Yep, that's a reasonable point. Racing Sim Tools, they have DLC planned. I'm not going to say any more about that because I'll get in trouble. So there will be future earning potential from that, and I assume that a lot of the hardcore sim racers will have bought it in early access at a reduced price. So I think you raise a really good point there, that there is a potential difficulty for earning the same kind of money long term than they did out of Assetto Corsa, certainly. So yeah, I never ask business questions from sim racing developers because I either don't like the answers or I just feel like I just don't need to know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd much rather ask a really boring technical question about how they model their suspension. Sim Racing Jason, Chris and Boo, podcast listener, was wondering, have you got around to converting your Talking Sims content into podcast format yet? And if so, which service can I find it on, mate? Yes, they are. I did that a couple of days ago. So they are on, certainly on iTunes and SoundCloud, and I think Google Podcasts should have picked it up by now. If you're in the UK, you can't submit your own podcast to Google to be scanned. You have to wait for the spider to crawl it, the same way you would with a website. So yeah, I don't. If you're on Android and you use Google Podcasts, it might be a little slow. Sup everyone, I've been dreaming about getting a proper rig for a long time, tight on space, and still hesitating between RC S1 or a SimLab Hoisingveld GT type. What's your take? I've only used an RC once, and it was a really good rig. I've got a SimLab Evo, and I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. So, but they did give it to me for free, so complete transparency there. They never asked me to say anything about it. They didn't even ask me to do a video about it, but I did. I think it's a really great rig, and I would for that over the RC personally. But I suggest, if you can, and I know it's difficult, get along to an event like Sim Racing Expo or one of the shops that does have a bunch of sim rigs. There aren't many. If you're in the UK, Demon Tweaks has them, I think, in their showrooms. You might be able to try out a couple just to get a feel. Verstappen says, have you had any experience with the RR3033 and the GTO Omega Pro Simulator cockpits? Compare them briefly. No, I've not tried either of them, so I can't say anything about that. We love Frank. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Gluten-free. Anything else going on in the chat? Do you think Codemasters will ever add tyre slips to force feedback in Dirt Rally 2? Well, I think you probably have to ask Codemasters, is the boring answer. I have maybe since I've got a bunch of people watching, maybe someone has the answer to this. When they introduced the new force feedback model about a month ago, that killed all of my force feedback. I can't get it working with the open sim wheel. So if anyone out there knows what that problem is and how to fix it, that'd be great. Because at the moment, I only have slip. So, yeah, sorry, I haven't really answered your question there. But I don't think Codemasters are overly fussed about working on their force feedback engine. That's gut feel. I don't have any personal contact with anyone at Cody's, so that certainly shouldn't be construed as an official position. But if you look at the way it's developed between the Formula One games, I just don't think it's a high priority for them. The number of people that are playing Dirt Rally 2 on a PC with, direct drive wheels or something where, you can really feel the nuance of it is probably measurable in, a few hundred maybe. I don't know the numbers, but it's not going to be... Yeah, I'm guessing I'm just saying it's not going to be high on their priority list. And I would love for them to prove me wrong. I use iTunes and we'll go and search from there. Yeah, well, I had an email from them yesterday saying it's on the iTunes store. So if it's not there, it's because Apple lie. That's all I can say. Right, I'm going to get some more of the questions from the YouTube page done. Otherwise, I'm not going to get through them. If you could drive any car from any era on any track in real life, what would you choose? Patrick. I am always going to say Porsche 962. It's a car that I've always had an absolute love affair with. In fact, I don't know if you can see, I haven't really shown it off because it's not fully healed yet, but I've just had a friend of mine do a Stefan Belloff Porsche 956 technically, but basically the same car, Nordschleifer tattoo. So that sort of answers your question. I don't think I wouldn't have the balls to drive a 962 well anywhere, let alone Nordschleifer, but yeah, there you go. In this fantasy world, that's what I'd pick. Christopher FFB, sorry, there's an F and a V and an I've done my best. Do you think ACC can ever recover from the kind of horrible launch and opening few months, or do you think we're looking back in a few years and asking why Kunos wasted their time trying to make more or less GTR 3? Well, there's a few bits in there. It wasn't the best launch, but equally, I don't think it's a horrible launch. There's still a lot of people playing it. The numbers haven't dipped that dramatically. I know Mike, I don't know if you're still watching, did a video saying the numbers had really dropped, but I think he managed to look at it at a point where it was a particular low point. It seemed to still be a reasonable number of users playing. Probably not the numbers they would hope for, though, and certainly not as many as Assetto Corsa. So what else was there in that question? I don't think we'll be looking back wondering if they wasted their time. I don't think they've wasted their time. I think they've made an incredible racing sim. The driving feel of it is absolutely second to none. I think the GT3 cars in Assetto Corsa Competizione are leagues ahead of the R-Factor 2 ones. The R-Factor 2 physics engine, it may well be better. I'd be willing to entertain a friendly debate on that one, but the cars are just so much better in Assetto Corsa Competizione than they are in R-Factor. The GT3 cars, anyway. Anyway, let's move on. I don't think that... Yeah, they've made more or less GTR 3, but people have wanted GTR 3 for 12 years or whatever it is, so... Also, I'm a big Blancpain fan, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask. I think it's great. Azar, why don't Fanatec open one place so everyone can go and have a test drive of their products before buying it? I'm not spending 1,200 quid without testing the DD1. Well, it's an interesting point, because I get a lot of people asking me, where we had one on the Discord this morning saying, is there just a shop you can go to and buy a rig and a wheel and pedals, or maybe try things out? It's like, no, not really. As I said, Demon Tweaks in the UK do a lot of that stuff, and I think they've got some of their stuff out in the showroom, although I haven't been there in a couple of years, so I don't know for sure. Sim racing is still pretty niche. I said in the video with Jimmy that the fact that he's got 300k subscribers, and sometimes he'll do an R-Factor 2 video, I would be amazed if 300,000 people own R-Factor 2. So, there's... that's not just R-Factor 2, by the way, so hopefully no one feels like I'm picking on them. Yeah, we're a small niche, guys, so anyone wanting to open a shop, a storefront, would have a really hard time doing it. Fanatec are probably the people that could. At the moment, your best bet is to go along to the sort of expos that they turn up. Sim Racing Expo at Nürburgring later this year is the best of the lot, but there are also motor shows and trade shows and racing events that these manufacturers are increasingly more involved in. Next question. Do you still play any old sim racing games. Brief history: what sim racing games have you played since you started racing? Well, that's going to be a fairly long list, actually. I started with Jeff Crammond's Grand Prix, Microprose Grand Prix by Jeff Crammond on the PC in 1992. My dad bought a copy of it, sort of the height of Miscellaneous, and it was of the 1991 Formula One season. And I wore, well, you didn't have a wheel in those days, so I wore the keyboard out playing that. And then I went on to sort of games like Grand Prix 2 and the Papyrus NASCAR and IndyCar game that were around in the early to mid 90s. Then I think it was really a case of PlayStation. So it pretty much Gran Turismo and F197. And then it was jumping back to the PC for titles like R Factor and then a bit of Race 07, Race 08. And then I took a bit of a break until, as I said, I picked up Assetto Corsa when it came out on the PS4 and thought, wow, this is good. This is better than I remember sim racing being. And, within a week, I'd ordered a wheel. Within 2 weeks, I'd ordered a new graphics card for the PC so I could get into the PC side of things. So, yeah, it was a pretty quick snowball. All right, let's jump back to chat because there's a load of stuff's gone on since I went back there. Mike is still lurking in the shadows. Yeah, it seems likely. Did you play any Race Room recently? I haven't played Race Room for a few weeks. I love the 90s Formula One cars. I had a chance to drive them while they were still in development. I wasn't really meant to. They gave me a pre-built copy so I could do the Group C cars and the Porsche 964 video, and they were already in the game at that stage, so I kept that for as long as I could so I could drive the 90s Formula 1 cars. I really enjoy them. I haven't driven the World Touring Car 2019 yet. I've been hearing really good things from Gluten Free, who's been driving them quite a lot this week. So what size monitor do you recommend? 32 or 35 or bigger? It really depends on your space. I have a 32-inch monitor, which you can just about see behind me there. But I don't know if it's really possible for you to see, but you can see I've got it right up against the wheel. I don't feel like you need anything much wider than that if you're doing that kind of thing. That being said, I have been driving a lot of ultra wides recently because that's what's being used at events for esports and things like that. So, and I really want one. I'm not sure you necessarily really need the stuff right at the edge of the screen, but it's nice to have the peripheral vision, and it's nice to be able to see wing mirrors as well. So, I haven't really answered your question, but that's the best I can do. Leonard G says R Factor 2 GT3s are better for sure. I disagree, man. You're welcome to your opinion. Zero bandwidth. There's a boutique PC shop near me that's gotten into designing custom sim rigs. They've got some demo units in the sales office. You might be able to find a similar shop around you. Yeah, that's the thing. Zero bandwidth is because it's quite a niche thing. It's weird places that some of these things pop up. Thinking of buying an AccuForce, and I have a T300. I'm really on the fence. Loving to hear your input on how much better your new wheel is over the T300. I mean, it's not going to make you any quicker, I don't think. It'll make it. The main thing I noticed is it made me make fewer mistakes. It was much easier to feel the car on the limit. So, you look at all the hot lappers and they're still driving, 10-year-old, G25s with the force feedback turned off. So I'm not sure that a decent wheel is necessarily going to make you much quicker, but it's much more fun. I wouldn't go back. As I said, I've been going to a lot of events this year, so I've been trying out a lot of different kit that is unfamiliar to me, and it's a weird experience going back to something on a sort of T300 type level. I was driving a TSPC racer recently, and I jumped on it and I thought, this is better than I remember, belt-driven wheels being. Actually, this isn't too bad. And then I came back to the direct drive wheel. I thought, oh no, it's better. So it's fine. Don't worry about it. So. Yes, it's a big difference. Yes, I would. If that died tomorrow, I would go out and replace it. I'd scrape the money together. I'd find a way and I'd replace it. I wouldn't buy a T300 as a stopgap, I don't think. No, the Husqvarna H pattern shifter is already sim racing's H3. Is the Hoising Veiled Age pattern available? I thought it was still... oh, that is Leon. Yeah, sorry, we were talking about Half-Life 3. I see what you're saying. Yes, it is. Man, Half-Life 3 jokes are so old that I'd forgotten that people made jokes about Half-Life 3. How old am I? I'm 34, I think. Joe McCormack, as a complete beginner photographer, what camera would you recommend? Congrats on 20k, by the way. I was following it at 3, and I was in that Q&A too. I don't remember your question from that, because I don't remember any of the questions from that. I tried watching some of it earlier to sort of refresh my memory, and it was like it never happened. It depends what sort of photography you want to do, Joe. It's a bit of a left field question. I think Joe's asking that because I used to be a professional photographer, so he's sort of purloining my experience there. I think if you're going to be, let's just assume you're going to be doing motorsport photography, then you really do need a DSLR of some description. I think a lot of the bridge cameras are a bit compromised, and yeah, the biggest bit of glass you can afford. That's the shortest answer I can give for that. But the best camera genuinely is the one you have on you. I bought one of these, which is a DJI Osmo Pocket, and it's essentially a mobile phone camera sensor on a stabilized gimbal. And the reason I do that is because when I'm going to events, it's much harder for me to lug around my DSLR to capture video content. I mean, I can lug it around, but if something happens, it takes 5 minutes to get it out of the bag, put it on the gimbal, get it set up, and you miss the event. Whereas that's in my pocket, and 5 seconds after getting it out of my pocket, it's filming. So it's great. Best camera is the one you have on you. That's the answer to that. Why all the hate for RF2? I love RF2, man. I don't hate it at all. I think probably got the wrong end of the stick there, man. RF2 is one of my favourite sims. I love the driving experience in it. I think I was talking about the tyre model and it being a bit difficult. That's certainly not hate. That's just they've tried to make something incredible, and it's just proven to be a bit difficult for the community to build stuff for. I don't think the GT3 cars are as good as Assetto Corsa Competizione, because they don't have the same access to data that the Kunos guys do on some of those cars. Some of them behave in a very weird way. I don't find the tyre model believable on the GT3 cars at all. They slide far too much, far more than they do in the real world, certainly. Anyway, that's my opinion. That's just an opinion. I love R-Factor 2. My favourite car of last year was the Orica. I'm not sure I don't know if it's the most accurate representation of a prototype out there, but the Orica FLM 07 or whatever it is was my absolute favourite car of last year. So anyway, Sebring was my favourite track. So hi Chris, tough question. Do you prefer pizza or pasta? Steve, you don't have to choose, man. That's the beauty. You do not have to choose. Chris, you're all arguing over my age. That's fine. Just wanted to say congrats on reaching 20k subs. That's a great accomplishment. All the best to you in the future. Thanks, Pro Sim Racing, man. Right, cool. Yeah, sorry, Ace UK. Maybe I was being a bit neggy on RF2, but yeah, let's clear that up. Love R-Factor 2. It's in my top 2 sims, probably 3. Maybe 3. I don't think I can have a top 2. It gets a bit complicated. Don't anyone ask me what my top sims are, because I'm not going to answer it. Right, back to the list. Dear Chris, what brought you into sim racing? I think I sort of touched on that already, but yeah, my dad bought Microprose Grand Prix in 1992, and I was watching the Formula 1 religiously by then, and the idea of being able to pretend to be Ayrton Senna was really overwhelming as an 8-year-old. So I haven't really looked back since. Andrew Petty says, hi Chris, I'd be really interested to know what games you enjoy outside of sim racing, RPGs, strategy games, FPSs. Used to be a big into some of the sort of more hardcore FPSs. I used to like the Armour games quite a lot. I've been any of the Bethesda, yeah I know, bad word, any of the Bethesda RPGs usually draw me in for more hours than I care to admit. In fact, I was actually replaying a bit of Fallout New Vegas earlier this week as a bit of a palate cleanser from sim racing when I was having a bad day. Aces High, I only have 2 simple questions. What's your dream road car? I would love an original Honda NSX. What's your favourite car that won the 24 Hours of Le Mans? I've got a few. Bentley Speed 8's a good choice. Any of the the Porsche 956 or 962s. You know, I don't think I'd have to pick a favourite. There are a bunch of them. Jaguar, the Group C Jag. Aston Martin DBR1, Jaguar D-Type. I couldn't pick a favourite. There are lots. Oh, yours is the BMW V12 LMR. Yeah, that's a good choice. I took some photographs of that when I was in the Le Mans Museum. It's a beautiful car in person, much more so than it sort of. I was sort of struck by how refined it looks in person, which didn't necessarily come across in the photographs I'd seen. I've not seen it in person before, so cool. Yeah, Leonard G, Nordschleifer incoming for IF2, so ACC will pick up some dust. Okay, man, cool. What are your top 5 sims? Thanks, Dan. I hate you. What are your top 5 worst sims? You know what? I have to expand my top 3 sims to top 4 because I think Goat Simulator would be in there. Big fan of that. Microsoft Flight Sim 5. I did a lot of that. I don't want to do worst anything. Do you think it's too late to start sim racing in your late 50s? Because that's what I do. I mean, reflexes and all. Nah. I mean, are you going to be as quick as a 14-year-old that spends 45 hours a day driving sims? No, of course not. Does that matter? Of course not. If you're having fun, do it. I mean, if you want to get into competitive esports, then yeah, you're probably struggling a bit. But I think there's a guy, Eric from Team Thrustmaster, was saying that one of their guys is in his late 40s, I think. So I don't know whether that was tongue-in-cheek or not, but I genuinely think they've got a broad age range on their team, so it's certainly not too late. Why do you want to turn this into a sim war, Leonard? Let's not pick on each other and call it out. We're cool. We can move on. We all have different favourite sims, and we all have different opinions on what they are. Let's all just move on, guys. Still mad Pescarolo never won Le Mans. Yeah, that's. I would really like one of the Pescarolos from that era to be in. I think Assetto Corsa would be the best choice with the recent cars that have been released by VRC. Do you miss triples? Thinking about moving from 327s to an ultra wide? Yeah, interesting question, man. And I touched on it, and as I said, I've been making a new rig review rundown video today, and I sort of touched on that there. If I wasn't making videos, I would still have triples, but triple 1440p monitors is a bit much to ask for decent frame rates and graphics in R-Factor 2 these days, I found. And I was struggling a bit with ACC in particular, for obvious reasons. So you also have the other problem where I have a capture card in my second PC, which I use to offload some of the workload from my sim racing rig, and that doesn't understand triple screens. So that gets in the way. I can't use that there. You've also got problems where if you capture it on your own machine, you have to have essentially grab a small envelope of your wide screen. So yeah, it's just not great for video making. But if I was just racing on sims, yeah, I'd keep the triples, I think, and just set it so certain sims that don't play well with triples would just work on one. I didn't really answer the question, do I miss them? I don't miss them because they were causing me a lot of grief for what I do with sim racing. So that answers the question directly. Chris, I'm trying to get into sim racing but struggling to because every single wheel comes with a broken encoder. What used wheel under $200 would you recommend to be reliable? Yeah, under $200, you're probably going to be looking at G29s and just trying to find a good one, man. Chris, your favourite movie and TV show? Oh man, I remember when I used to watch TV and movies. I think the last show that I really got into was Breaking Bad. Movies, the last thing I really enjoyed The Quiet Place. That was good. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, Magnussen's 46 and is doing pretty okay with Corvette racing. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, Zero Bandwidth. If you look at GT racing, there are plenty of people, both professional and gentleman drivers, that are advancing in their years. And it's not just a wallet that you need to be able to do that. You also need, a little bit of talent at least. So I think that's a great point. Joe McCormick, how do you go about practice? I feel super inconsistent and refuse to race online until I feel like a decent driver. Any tips? I did a video on this actually a while ago, but my approach to practice is to make sure that I have some structure to what I'm practicing. I sort of come from the position where I was learning to play musical instruments when I was learning to play drums and piano and stuff, that if you just sit down with a guitar or drums or whatever and you just play, you might get a little bit better, but it's unlikely. But if you push yourself to say, okay, this is what I need to practice specifically, and set up a plan to approach that and better yourself, you generally learn more out of it. So to cut an extremely large subject down into a very short answer, set yourself a plan, do some research, find something you want to specifically improve rather than saying I want to go quicker, and then work out how you're going to do that and approach it, and rinse and repeat until you get there. Cool. I think we're pretty caught up with the chat now, so I'm going to go and answer some questions from YouTube. Cool. Nick Hagan says the sim channel with the chillest voice. Cool, man. Yeah, that's not a question. Are there any modcasts you'd like to see or DLC for a game you'd like to see? No specific game in mind. Man, how long have you got? Everything that ever raced at Le Mans but hasn't made it into a sim would be the shortest answer, or Daytona for that matter. I think I would like some better 1960s and 70s sports car content. So how you've got the GT Legends mod that's sort of been ripped and brought into Assetto Corsa, a decent set of cars of that sort of era. Can-Am, there you go. If you just want a simple answer, Can-Am, let's have that. Also, what racing game are you looking forward to in the near future? Kartcraft going out pre-release. Yeah, Kartcraft, I've just got back into. I took a break after I got the direct drive wheel because it wasn't really all that well optimized for it to start with, and that's a bit of a thumb breaker. But yeah, I really enjoy Kartcraft. But the thing that has got me very excited is Automobilista 2. I really want to see what those guys can do with the Project Cars 2 engine there. That's some exciting stuff. And GTR 3, which I am less cynical about the more people I talk to about it. So I've gone from being pretty concerned that it wasn't really going to happen to feeling like it's definitely going to happen. And I'm looking forward to when someone comes back to this video in 6 months' time and makes me eat my words on that one. Cool. Looks like the stream's buffering, but it says excellent connection. Can you guys let me know in chat if it's dropped the picture? Okay, well, I'm going to move on anyway because I can't trust YouTube, just as a general rule anyway. Shrifty says, I would love to know what makes a really great sim racer in your opinion. Is it, for example, the skill to do extremely good hot laps, super consistent, or being a super nice guy that plays by all the rules and never upsets anyone? But it's all of them. I'm really concerned that the stream has dropped. There you go. No, we're back. I think my YouTube just lost connection. Can someone confirm in chat that everything's still working? Oh, cool. 30 seconds behind. Well, I've now got 30 seconds of people telling me everything's good before it catches up to this point. Anyway, okay, so go back to Shrifty's question. Now I've got my my fears that the stream's died out of the way. I think it's all of those things. One of the things I really liked about the SRO Esport GT Series competition is that you can't qualify to get into that using hot laps. It's all hot stints. So you've got to do half an hour run in the car or a 25-minute run in the car and be consistent across that time. It's not just banging out a hot lap, which you're literally driving the car on its absolute edge. Racing involves managing the car, managing tires, managing the evolution of the track. It means managing yourself, being able to bang over the curbs at Monza after doing 100 hot laps and being able to just get that 2/10 quicker, that's an amazing skill, but it doesn't necessarily work in a racing situation in a a 90-minute long race or something. So yeah, consistency is the absolute key, but being consistently slow isn't much help either. I think that answers that. Appreciate the work goes into your vids. Question: how are you getting the B-roll of the cars sitting still, etc.? Jakester, I've actually been asked to do a video to show how I do that, and I think that might be kind of fun. I'm going to try and get that done in a couple of weeks' time. But the short answer is that in any new racing sim I get, I spend as much time as I can learning the replay cameras and learning how to control them. I try to use an Xbox controller where possible, or a joystick or something to control the cameras, which is usually better than a keyboard. But it's all just about finding creative ways to shoot the cars. Sometimes I will shoot them in very slow motion, then speed it up, or vice versa. I quite like in Assetto Corsa where you can set the wind speed really high, just doing a static camera, letting the clouds blow past for a long time while doing a very slow pan. Gives you lots of really dynamic stuff. So it's just really, it's just about making sure that you know the tools you're using, and then once you've got the basics down, just having a play. Cool. Right. Bensonius Prime asks, your videos are probably nicest looking on any channel. Sometimes looks like you're playing a different games than what I see on my own screen. Graphic fidelity as well as a lot of the camera angles, tracking shots, etc. It's not something that seems possible to achieve in my experience, though of course it must be. Using the standard tools. What are your PC specs, and do you use any sort of special mods, processing, or other technical wizardry to get the camera angles and graphic quality that are hallmark of your content? That was a wordy question, but I think it leads really nicely on from what I was just saying. The first thing that I think I do differently to a bunch of other people is that I record everything at 1440p, which really helps. You're not having to rely on anti-aliasing to do as much work, which can produce some pretty weird looking results. So while most people do watch back at 1080p, just having the raw footage at 1440 seems to make a big difference. And I think YouTube allows 3 times the bandwidth for 1440p as well over 1080. I don't know what the numbers scale out as, but it seems to just the compression ratio seem to work out better. The camera angles, tracking shots, etc. It's the same as my answer for Jakester. It's just practicing and I've been driving the Assetto Corsa camera, for want of a better word, the drone camera in Assetto Corsa for 2 years, so I've just gotten used to what it can do. PC specs, I'm running a 1080 Ti on the sim racing rig, and I can't remember, it's a 1470, what am I talking about, 4770K chip. I swapped around my motherboard and chipsets, so the 8700K is now in my editing machine because I just need the extra cores and a little bit of extra speed for crunching video. It's just more important there than for gaming. I think that covers everything you asked. Yeah, cool. Anything going on in chat? Lots of saying that everything's working. That's good. I'm so glad it's working. Cool, yeah, no questions in the chat, all just talking amongst yourselves. That's fine, I'm cool with that. Right, when will the iRacing series return? Sam asks. I think I asked that. I'd love to see you trying out the skippies, but have you also considered iRacing endurance or special events? I get asked on a weekly basis to do iRacing endurance and special events, so I think I'm going to have to give in at some point. But as I sort of said earlier in the video, my problem with jumping over to iRacing is and I fully accept that this is my problem, not an iRacing problem, is it just takes me too long to readjust my driving style to iRacing. I think you can turn in really hard on iRacing in a way that you can't in particularly Assetto Corsa, but also R-Factor and Race Room, etc. I think there's just a bit more the tyres have just got a bit more play in them in some of the other sims than iRacing. Oh, sorry, I got completely lost there, guys. Something about iRacing. Yeah, I'll do it. That's the short answer. Okay, we're talking about graphics cards in the chat. That's cool. Everyone, no questions. That's good. Still all talking amongst yourselves. That's so good. Right. Swifty, another question. Would it be okay to have some do's and don'ts for a sim racer beginner? Yeah, do practice. Do go online and practice. Find personally, I would suggest you find a beginner-friendly league or just a club rather than a league, probably, to join, where you'll get friendly advice from people. If you can't find one, we run bi-weekly Assetto Corsa, fortnightly Assetto Corsa races. You can pick up AC for next to no money these days, so come and join us. And we are I think we're pretty helpful. I don't know if Gluten Free is still in the chat, but you can put the link for the Discord in there. Join up, and lots of very helpful people in there that do things like share setups and tips and talk about really boring stuff like breaking points and that sort of thing. Chris, do you think the URD M8 will ever be released? Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? You're probably the only person who came close to driving it with approval by Alice. Yeah. Alice sent it to me, and I haven't heard from him since the day after he sent it to me. So about the day I put the video out. I don't know what's happened there. When he sent it to me, he said there was a couple of weeks' work left to do on the interior, and I think fixing up some sounds and stuff. Just the usual sort of finishing touches. Which is why I didn't show any shots of the interior in that video, because I thought it wouldn't be fair. But do I think it'll ever be released? Yeah, probably. Will it be released in a time frame where we're happy with it? I don't know. URD sort of go through sort of fits and starts, don't they? They're either really, really productive for a bit, and then they go away for a bit, and then they come back. I don't think it's Alice's main thing. So I guess real life gets in the way. He was also working on some the old GT1 Porsche and stuff like that, wasn't he? He was showing pictures of. I'd like to see that. You're hearing that Mike's hearing that URD's shut down. Oh, well, that's a shame to hear. Lars Neinberg, sorry, man. Musician question: what's your dream guitar? I think I've got all the guitars I want, really. For a long time, when I was having to deal with cheap instruments, all I wanted was an American Standard Telecaster, and I bought one 7 or 8 years ago, and I've stuck with that. And I've got a nice Les Paul as well. So I think I've got everything I want covered. I don't really lust after the really expensive stuff like PRSs and some of the really custom stuff. There's a guy who comments on a lot of my videos called, I think Metal Mike's his name, who's got this really nice it's like 8-string sort of burl top guitar, custom guitar. He sent me a link for it at one point, but it's just like, it must have been thousands of dollars, but it's just incredible piece of craftsmanship. But no, I like guitars nice and simple, to keep the answer as short as I possibly can on that. What's your favourite aircraft in flight sim days? I used to fly flight sims because I was into flying model aircraft. So I used to, when I was flying like Flight Sim 5 and that pre-Flight Sim X, certainly, I used to fly a lot of the just light aircraft, things like Cessnas and stuff, from the control tower view using a radio control transmitter. So that's probably not the answer you were looking for there, was it? For PC nerds, can a 1050 8GB of RAM and a quad-core 7th gen i5 run sim racing games in decent quality? Yeah, Pedro. I think the only thing you'd struggle with is ACC, really, and maybe R Factor 2. If you start turning up the sliders on RF2, it gets a bit resource hungry, particularly on Sebring and Le Mans, because there are just so many assets there, and I assume Nordschleifer will have the same sort of issue as well. But if you're happy to turn down the settings on those particular sims, you'll be fine. I mean, iRacing in particular, if that's the way you're going to go, is so well optimized. You can pretty much run it on a boiled potato. Grant Campbell's got a Gibson Les Paul Jr. with a P90. I recently sold my Les Paul Jr. because I wasn't playing it. Love the guitar, and that sound it does, that sort of rock and roll sound, is fantastic. I had too many guitars. So said the wife anyway. Follow-up point on the URD. I've had viewers try to buy URD mods recently who can't get hold of them to receive the mods they've purchased. Yeah, I've heard that in the past. I haven't bought anything recently, so I can't comment on that. But yeah, I will reach out to Alice and see what's going on with that, because I wouldn't want people in the community to be feeling negative towards that, because they, we need, even for those people that don't like the URD stuff, we need people producing content for Assetto Corsa to keep the community alive and vibrant. Cool. Really hoping Alice as well. Yeah, me too. Don't mind potato qualities coming from Xbox One. It's not necessarily about the quality of the image. It's just about making sure you can have decent frame rates. Yeah, I was going to say Zero Bandwidth sort of chimed in on the same thing. I was running a GTX 570 with Assetto Corsa on a single screen, and it was fine. I probably didn't need to upgrade the graphics card, but I did anyway. One can never have too many guitars. Yeah, that's... I mean, I've still got 7 or 8. I'm not wanting for guitars, so I did get rid of a few because it was getting a bit silly. Because I've been playing since I was 10, so... and I still had most of the guitars I've had along the way. Anyway, let's take some questions from YouTube, because that was the whole premise of this. What's your favourite racing game that isn't a sim, i.e. Need for Speed, Midnight Club? The Project Gotham 2, probably. I don't know why 2, but that was the one that sprung to mind. I loved the Project Gotham games. They were amazing. Who's my favourite sim racing YouTuber apart from yourself, obviously? Well, that's not fair, because there's like 3 of them in the chat. I think the people that are in the chat today are all exceptional in their own ways. I always recommend Mike Sim Racing 604 to people. He's just got a wonderful take on sim racing. I admire his positivity and his work ethic and his general just approach and community mindedness to the whole thing. Dan, I think Dan's still in chat. I saw him a minute ago. Dan DiMaggio, he's been chipping away at it for a long time. I really like his stuff. Again, another person that seems to really engage in the thinking side of sim racing, which I like. I think he's... and then I think I would have to say I really like Jimmy. It's an easy answer, but his enthusiasm for sim racing is absolutely infectious, and you need people like that. Some of the people that are a bit more negative, I don't tend to watch so much anymore, because I don't need negativity in my life. Oh god, there's more questions. I thought I was done with that. Favorite racing series and driver in that series. My favourite racing series this year is the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the IMSA, as it has been on and off for a number of years, and probably ALMS before that. I think it just guarantees great racing, and I don't really have a favourite driver. Jordan Taylor's worth a follow on Twitter. He's good value for money. And I really like the Blancpain GT series as well. And if I had to pick a favourite driver there, it'd be Raffaele Marciello, just because I followed him during his single-seater career, and he always felt like a driver that was going to end up in a Ferrari in Formula One. And he didn't get into a great team in GP2, and then the money ran out, and he went to Blancpain and has been destroying people there. So... and I got to interview him live on air a few weeks ago, so that was very cool. That was ticking a box for me, certainly. Who's the biggest influence or inspiration as a content creator within sim racing and outside of sim racing? That's an interesting point. The people I've mentioned all inspire me in different ways. As I said, it's more about attitude than or approach than necessarily the types of video that they make, because I've tried to... and as I think we all have tried to make videos my own way. That's why I don't do too many race videos on the channel, because I think Jimmy does it brilliantly, and there's no point in me duplicating content. I do the odd one because it's fun and I enjoy doing that, but if the whole channel was like that, I wouldn't have 20,000 subscribers. That's just a fact of the matter. As for outside of sim racing, Chris Harris on cars was a huge influence on how I go about things. I think that probably comes across, and I get Chris Harris comments all the time, so I can't hide that. I have to wear that influence on my sleeve. And video creators, like I think people that make movies on YouTube in a short space of time, people like Casey Neistat, you know, the content that he makes isn't necessarily the most relevant to what I do, but his approach, his sort of work ethic, and his aesthetic for producing these films every day, although he doesn't do daily vlogging anymore, and I think he's pretty much quit YouTube by the looks of things. He hasn't uploaded in months. But so yeah, there you go. A lot of questions, hopefully give you a bit of scope for answers. Yeah, it certainly did, Doxognosis. What's going on in chat? Mods are the reason AC has been going along for as long as it is. Yeah, totally agree, Dan. The modding community's not only kept AC alive, but I think it's taken it to places that it wasn't, 18 months or so ago when Kunos moved on from Assetto Corsa, when they last delivered the last piece of content. I think Assetto Corsa is bigger now than it was in 18 months ago, which is just incredible. AC mod community is pure gold. Totally agree. Question for Chris: if you had to choose one element of a sim that could be poor, what would it be? If you could tolerate bad sounds, bad graphics, poor force feedback. Well, I couldn't tolerate poor force feedback. I've proven that to myself recently with a couple of recent titles that have been less than functional on my setup. So I think, yeah, graphics would be the thing that I would sacrifice. And depending on the type of sim, you could. I would be happy with a really great single player only game or a really great multiplayer only game. I do that for iRacing because the single player element is, do you like driving around a practice circuit on your own? So yeah, I think graphics would be the easiest, or just it being single player or multiplayer. If you make your way to an IMSA race, is at VIR at some point, I'll be happy to spot you a pint. Man, yeah, the thing I love about being on a YouTube channel is that every time I mention that I love IMSA, someone pops up and says, "Oh man, if you ever come to X-Ray, you ever go to VIR, or you ever come to Road America or Road Atlanta or Laguna Seca, so I live 10 minutes down the road. You can crash on my couch." That's great. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, people that I've never met before are inviting me to come and stay with them, which is not how you should approach people on the internet, kids. But no, just incredible warmth that comes from the community, which I really appreciate. And the big problem, the reason I've never been out to the United States to watch an IMSA race, is that I don't think I could pick one. If I had to, it'd probably be Petit Le Mans. But how do you choose that over Daytona or Sebring? Or I'd really like to do Motorsport and Watkins Glen, week after week, because they've sort of got the double header going on there. How do you choose? I love Chris Harris. Still wish he did his YouTube videos more often. Yeah, got lost in Top Gear. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dan. I don't mind Chris Harris on Top Gear, but they don't use him properly. They've taken a man who's got a really specific skill set and was really great at what he did, and then allow him to do a small part of that while also doing the sort of quasi Jeremy Clarkson thing, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me anyway. And that's no fault of Chris Harris. That's absolutely the direction. Where were we? Thank you for all the sharing the love of the drive. Would you close the YouTube channel if you could be a trackside anchorman or other participant in real world racing or TV? Yeah. Someone asked Jimmy that question for our live stream, and he said he wouldn't shut down the YouTube channel because it enables him to interact with people doing things like this and meet lots of cool people in a way that a real world motorsport gig probably wouldn't. And I must admit, I thought about that a couple of times since, and yeah, I have to agree with him. I love doing this, the interactivity, the feedback, and I get a glimpse of that side of things by going and doing the SRO eSport series. So I'm off to Spa next week, which I'm just totally casually dropping into that like some sort of twat. But no, yeah, it's so cool to get to be able to go and do that kind of thing. But I wouldn't stop making YouTube videos and doing this just to go and do a bit of commentary on a GT series somewhere. There you go. There's your answer. Okay, you're all talking about Chris Harris. That's cool. Do you think DPI should go to Le Mans to replace LMP2 with hypercar coming up? No. I don't think DPI was ever... this is going to be controversial. I know a couple of people who feel quite strongly about the opposite of what I'm going to say. I don't think DPI was ever a particularly appealing concept to SRO. It doesn't really fit with what Le Mans stands for. It works so well in IMSA, and they've managed to make a series incredibly sustainable, and it's brilliant because of it. But Le Mans attracts manufacturers, and it would be hard to see Audi or BMW or Aston Martin slapping an aero kit on an LMP2 car and putting their own engine in it. I understand why in the United States for that market it makes sense for the manufacturers that are in there, and I'm glad they are. I just don't think it fits Le Mans in quite the same way. So, and there's also the other side, which is I am really on the hype train for hypercar. I think the concept's brilliant, and that artist rendering of the Valkyrie is that they released over the Le Mans weekend is extraordinary. And if the cars look anything like that, and it is going to be powered by a, whatever it's 7.5 litre V12 or whatever stupid engine it's got in it, then I'm going to be waiting for the Le Mans 2021 tickets to go online and just buying them immediately, because that's going to be a hell of a spectacle, and I can't wait. Hope to bump into you at Spa then. Chris managed to get lucky with Jimmer last year at Sim Racing Expo. Yeah, Dylan, find out where the esports arena is at Spa, I think. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, and I don't think it's confirmed. So, and I'm not even sure if it's true or not. But my understanding is it's on the roof of the pit building, which, if that's true, that's going to be so cool. But do come and find the esports arena. We will be there most of the time, unless the odd bits where I get to slip off and see some racing action and that sort of thing. But generally over the weekend we will be there, and if we're not, it means there's nothing important going on, so you can jump on a sim rig and play some Assetto Corsa Competizione. What does DPI stand for? Dots per inch. Daytona Prototype International. They are LMP2 cars with a bit of manufacturer specific styling and engines. So it's sort of LMP2 plus. They're quite a bit quicker than the LMP2 cars now. They've taken the lead weights off of them though, which is very cool. Where were we up to? Oscar, please share the photos you make at Spa 24 Hour on the Discord. The photos are amazing. Yeah, I'm going to share the photos on the Discord as much as I can. Because I'm driving over there, I can take the DSLR. It's really difficult to fly with it because the Motorsport lens I use is about that big and weighs about 7 kilos, so it's not really practical to fly with. Oh, hey Go for Chucks, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us on the stream. Daytona Prototype International LMP2. Yeah, Oscar's answering your question better than I could there. Cool, let's go back to YouTube. I have a few. What's your dream car? I think I answered that, and I'm going to still stick with the Honda NSX, although someone shared, I can't remember who it was, and I apologise if you're watching, man. Someone shared some pictures of their Alfa Romeo Giulia on his 1964 Alfa on the Discord earlier, and that had me crying. Such a beautiful car. It's one of the Giugiaro designed cars from the 60s that just gets it right. You've got the GTA, which is basically the same car in Assetto Corsa, the slightly racier one in Assetto Corsa, which I really love driving as well. So there you go. There's my two choices. Do you sketch tracks? Oh man, yeah, I used to do that a lot as a kid. Actually, I haven't done that in a long time, because I think it would go very quickly from back of an envelope sketch to learning how to create mods, and I really don't have time for that. If you could create a racing series, what would it be? It would be totally impractical, but a modern sort of Can-Am type thing. Limited restriction, crazy horsepower, open to interpretation for all sorts of crazy aero devices and stuff. It would produce terrible racing. People would be horribly injured and hurt. No tracks would be able to support it. It would be financially untenable, but it would be fun for the 3.5 events that it would manage to go on for. I'm going to buy a G920 and Project Cars 2. I've never driven a car or simulator. Do you have some tips for me to start with? Yeah, I think I've sort of covered this a bit earlier in the video, but just jump in and drive, man. find a friendly league. Project Cars 2's got, I keep saying league, I mean club, but if you don't know where to start, jump onto Race Department. They've got a good sort of club section there, so just find some people to help you out. It's much easier when you've got people on your own side. Speaking of the guy with the Alpha Julia, Robert Lindstrom, that's the guy. So I sold my complete setup a few months ago, not using it, and wanted to spend the money on my real car instead, a 1967 Alfa Romeo Giulia Sprint GT. But starting to realise I miss sim racing too much, finding myself in a position to maybe buy the new stuff this autumn. What would be your site of choice to go and buy everything? Seat wheel, accessories, etc. I think we were having this conversation earlier. There's no real one-stop shop. So if anyone out there is looking for a business idea and really, really enjoys risk, setting up a sim racing e-store would be a great thing, I think. Before you go bankrupt, of course. Have you ever driven on a real track? If so, what? If not, what would be your first track of choice? Yeah, I've done a couple of track day things. I drove a Nissan GTR at Silverstone a few years ago. That was fun. And I've got some stuff I'm trying to line up at the moment. I bought an MX-5 Mark II for the purpose of doing some track days. But what would be my first track of choice? It'd be Brands Hatch, because it's reasonably local, and I think it's one of the best racetracks in the world. There you go. Great hair, do you use conditioner, and are you on Tinder? Gluten-free sim racer. You don't need me to be on Tinder. You already know who I am. You've got my phone number, mate. You don't... Gluten-free doesn't get this whole modern dating thing. Oh, Pedro, you're in the chat, man. What did you ask? What do you think the future holds for GTE Pro? Oh, yeah. This was, when I set this up a couple of weeks ago, this was a really big topic of conversation because BMW had just pulled out of WEC. Ford, obviously, were saying goodbye. So, yeah, next year we've just got Porsche and Ferrari and one Aston Martin. That's the concern for me, is they've gone, Aston Martin have gone from a 2-car program down to one. GTE Pro is in a mess, and unless some other manufacturers get involved or they substantially change how it's going, then there's going to be a problem there. I suspect ACO wouldn't mind if GTE disappeared a bit, because then they could get their fingers in the GT3 part. In fact, you say that sorry, Pedro, I missed the second part of your question. I think, yeah, I agree. Can GTE be replaced by GT3? I think, financially speaking, looking at the business model for GT3, it would be preferable for ACO to have GT3 involved. And I think I touched on the hypercar stuff quite a lot already, so I won't retread that ground. What does your dream track look like? Brands Hatch. Do you think a 24-hour race with single-seaters would be a good idea? Well, I think that's essentially what LMP1 cars are. They're essentially single-seaters with a bit of bodywork around them. So if you're talking about just literally taking a Formula 1 car or a Formula 2 or whatever, Indy car, and running it for 24 hours, then no, it wouldn't be a good idea, because none of them would last to the end of the race without, substantial engineering changes, and then you're building an endurance racing car at that stage, so it sort of defeats the object, I guess. What's going on in chat? I realise I've just been sort of ignoring that for a bit. 67 Alpha, Chris. Yeah, sorry, gluten-free. I messed that one up, didn't I? Note to self, this is where you leave or drive home. Cheers. Cheers, Zero Bandwidth. Thanks for coming and hanging out, man. Really appreciate it. Just casually dropping in that, driving a GTR around Silverstone. It wasn't that great, man. These driving experiences, they give you like 3 laps, and all the guy's saying is stay away from the curb, stay away from the curb. I mean, I really wanted to not stay away from the curbs. Yeah, you don't really get the real experience of driving a car like that in 3 laps. Even 10 laps or 20 laps, they're never going to let you open it up in the right way. I mean, you can go and spend money and hire track day cars. You spend a few £1,000s and have someone deliver you like a Ferrari 488 to your track of choice, and then you can do what you like with it. But you got to pay big money for that. Cool. What else were we? GT3 is the best racing class at the moment. I think, yeah, Oscar, it's the most sustainable racing class, because the cars are cheap. certainly compared to GTE, and the business model is predicated entirely on it being paid for by the AMs. So it's certainly the healthiest format of racing probably in the world at the moment, short of outside of club level stuff, you know. So Paul Dallalana said he'd want the AMS to be able to compete against the pros. He bolts the numbers by having one big category and make customer racing more accessible. Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually. GTE Pro as a concept is probably days are numbered, and if numbers do drop any further, then mixing in the pros and the AMs in the same way they do in GT3 series makes a lot of sense. Did you see the R8 LMS 2020 GT2? That looks mega. Yeah, it looks great, doesn't it? GT2 as a concept's a bit of a strange one. SRO having named it GT2, but it's slower than GT3, although they've got more horsepower, but they're not going to corner as quickly, so it's all just a bit mad. The car looks great, though. It'd be interesting to see what SRO have planned for that. Thanks, Leon. Thanks for hanging out tonight. It's cool to talk to you, man. Is there a car or track mod you've never been able to find, maybe at the right quality, that you'd love to see? Oh, man, yeah, there are loads. I've always wanted a really good Kyalami. There's an Assetto Corsa rip of the Automobilista one. The reason is because I want to drive Group C cars at Kyalami. The old school Kyalami, which is in Automobilista, but the cars aren't. So yeah, it's just getting. That's the problem with all of these sims, is some of them have the track, some of them have the cars. Getting it all together at the right place at the right time is often not possible. My sim racer. Oh, you've just answered that. Hey Gustav, how you doing, man? Cool. Right, we're caught up with chat. Doing well. So go back to YouTube. If you could pick a car and track to drive in real life, what would you choose? I think I did that, didn't I? Have you ever raced in sim in VR? What do you prefer? What do you dislike about it? Yeah, I've got a Rift, Jason. I really like driving in the Rift, but it's crap for making videos with. Same with the triple screens, because you're mirroring from a 1020 pixel square image onto a 1440p screen. It looks a bit rubbish, and I've sort of got myself in a bit of a knot with the types of videos I make now. So they have to be. They have to look good. I think that's important to me. So I don't do as much VR as I used to. Also, I'm doing a lot of longer races now, and I'm finding that 3 or 4 hour session in a VR headset isn't as appealing as just jumping in and out quickly. It gets a bit warm. What sim will be the first to compete against iRacing online and give sim racers a second choice for scheduled online racing? Don't know, James. I don't know that any specific sim is going to exactly copy iRacing's model, because why would you? iRacing offers the scheduled racing model in iRacing is really, really good for the really popular series, but it's really a bit crap for some of the less popular series. If you're not available that one time a week that an unpopular series goes goes official, then you're shit out of luck. Whereas, running leagues and things like that gives you the opportunity to do more with that. So iRacing makes it work because it's got so few cars, ultimately, I think. I'm not sure it would have worked for Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is sort of where I feel like that question might have been sort of stemming from. I know people were upset that it didn't have scheduled online racing, but it's one car type. So unless you're just rotating around the tracks at different schedules and stuff, I don't understand how it would have worked. So be interested to hear what chat thinks about that, actually. Oscar, oh man, yeah, you had a question in here. Cool. Nice to see your channel's grown so big. I've watched your videos since you had around 300 subs, and you seem to be having fun while you do it. I am, Oscar. I'm having a lot of fun, man. Quality's also improved greatly. Yeah, I'm trying, man. I tell you what, I have the mentality I have with these videos is that each video I make has to have one thing that is better than any other video I've done. I have to improve one thing each time, and then it's a sort of slow incremental burn. So your question, Oscar, does the whole YouTube occupation take much of your free time? All of it, and quite a lot more. Or can you still balance it so that you have enough spare time for other things? I don't know. I don't do anything else anymore. Just hoping that making these videos doesn't put too much pressure on you. Yeah, there is a bit of pressure, but it's good pressure. I like that if I haven't made a video for a couple of days, I start feeling a bit antsy and feeling like I'm not fulfilling the potential of this. Now, I feel like I could take this channel a bit further and maybe do this full time. I don't know. There's no sort of specific mark. I'm not going to get to 50,000 subscribers and say, right, I'm a full-time YouTuber now, because I don't think that's how life works. But yeah, I like the pressure. A little bit of healthy pressure to keep making things better is important. Okay, so we got a whole load more in chat. Bit of a Discord clique question. Have you seen the esports contenders IRL? How far off the pace is our Chug does hot laps? Yeah, Chuck's a very fast guy, and you can see on RSL live timing how he stacks up. Now, whether he could take that to being a professional esports driver is a very different thing. As I said earlier, it's not necessarily about, for those guys, it's about being able to perform in many different sims on an unfamiliar rig in a place they've never been to before, in front of an audience immediately. You might have a bit of prep time, but it's a very different thing to be honing laps in a simulator at home. Chuck does a great job of that, and I have no doubt that if he was if he applied himself as an esports driver, he would be able to pick that up. But as they are, I think they're two very different, incomparable things. The newly released GT PC mod for AMS is great. Group C, C2, GT. Oh wow, C2 as well. Group 4, Group B. I haven't tried that, man. That sounds right up my street. Good stuff. Really love how far your channel's grown. I've been here since 1,500 subs. Really enjoyed every single upload since. Oh, thanks, man. Really appreciate it. RSR posted a teaser of a new car on Instagram. The audio sounds amazing. What's the new car, Grant? Is it one of the NGT cars, the Ferrari and the Porsche? RF2 is going to copy iRacing, at least it looks like. Yeah, it does look a bit like that. I'd forgotten about that, Leonard. Congrats on 20k RSS. Oh, yeah, of course, RSS. Yeah, I knew what you meant, man. If you're considering getting GT Sport as a sin, it kind of does the same job as iRacing, kind of, but getting there in terms of scheduling and such. I really like GT Sport and what they're doing with it. I'm trying to sort something out with a couple of companies to do some GT Sport stuff, because I think Sony, Polyphony, etc. are doing a fantastic job there, and I want to be able to bring some of that content to you guys with a slightly different take on it. I think we shall see. Sector 3 also wanting to develop a competition system for racer in the hiring programs. Yeah, everyone wants a competition system. Everyone wants it so they can do the esports thing. That's the big driver for this. It's not to appease the 500 guys that are going to turn up on a race night and do it. It's about esports and the partnerships with big companies and the amount of money that's flowing around in that area at the moment. We will see how all of that pans out. There's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of external influence on sim racing from big real world motorsport and car companies. So lots of decisions are being made that are business decisions, which is strange for sim racing developers. They don't, in my experience, they often the business gets put to one side just so they can do the sim racing bit. But I'm sort of seeing some more businessy stuff going on, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Really anticipating the NGT cars by RSS. Yeah, me too, Oscar. I can't wait for them. Lots of people talking about videos. GT Sport does a great job of introducing people to competitive racing, real motorsport. Yeah, Oscar, I've been watching, I watch a lot of Super GT's stuff, and the quality of racing you get there, particularly when it's good, is fantastic. When it's bad, it's just as bad as any other sim. It's crap in iRacing a lot of the time as well. Even with an expensive barrier for entry and all these rating systems, there are still times where you just have really bad racing. Human beings, man. Human beings. Cool. More questions. Frank James. Chris, how long's a piece of string? Having found the length, what can you do with it? Oh, man. Is that Frank from the Discord, Frank? It must be. How thick should it be before it's considered... Some string would be useless, don't you? I think a lot of things are useless, Frank. That's the question I'm going to ask. Frank from the Discord. If you've been on any of our community races that Frank has participated in, you'll know that he's a one-of-a-kind individual. Ernest Dela Cruz, fast or slow? Fast, always. Wet or dry? Oh, I see where this is going. Yeah, driving in the dry. Manual or automatic? Manual every time. Bums or boobs? Why not both? Blondes or brunettes? Why not both? Mountain or beach? Mountain. Raikkonen or Massa? Raikkonen. Pole position or podium? Podium. Yeah. Pole position doesn't really count unless you're in Formula E. Then you get a couple of points for it. What's your favourite sim racing title and why? Probably Assetto Corsa, just because the variety of content in it. There are bits about. I say this about all the sims. I think every sim does about 70% of what it does incredibly well. It does about 20% pretty well, and 10% of it's ragingly bad, just atrocious. And I think they all are. And it's about. I think people often pick their favourite sims based on which attributes they care the least about fit into that 10%. So for me, Assetto Corsa fits that particular model. What's your favourite track you would like to see in said favourite sim? There's lots of stuff I'd like to see in Assetto Corsa. What's not in it at the moment, though? Kyle Army. Yeah, I have to go back to Kyle Army. Favourite racing series? I've answered that already. Porsche 911 or Corvette? I'm a 911 guy. I have the Lego one up on the shelf above me at the moment. Yeah, big 911 fan, big Porsche fan in general, actually. So, going back to chat, Frank is our spiritual god. He's not just our spiritual god, he's our actual god, in corporeal and non-corporeal forms. Well done on 20k, Mr. Hay, well deserved. Love your mod reviews and recently joined your Discord, which is great, BTW. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Ginger. Ginger Malteser. That's not a thing that exists in the real world. Ginger Maltesers. That's what a horrifying thought. Zero Bandwidth asks, I'm back from watching the first Q&A to make sure I wasn't repeating anything here, and it turns out I would have. So instead I'll ask the follow-up question. Did your day job in marketing contribute to the high production value of your videos, e.g. media advertising? Do you focus on music or visual arts in school? Yeah, lots of pieces in there. I think the short answer is yes. My background is in digital media, particularly in I studied audio production at university and then did a photography degree later on. So all of that fed into it. I've always been impressed by the level of quality that's gone into the visuals, the commentary, recording, backing music. Your videos feel like much higher budget productions, like what I remember enjoying from a certain other Chris H. Yeah, there you go. As I said, I wear the Chris Harris thing on my sleeve. It's a big influence in what I do. Is there a car that you favour that isn't found in many sims? Which version of the vehicle is it? I think I have a lot of interest in the Group C era. So you don't often see, you always see Porsche 962s and for some stupid reason the Mazda 787B represented, but there are a lot of really cool cars that don't get much love. You don't get much of the Jaguars, you don't get many, and I suspect that these are licensing things. You don't get the Lancias, the LC1, the LC2, they would have been great. The Group C cars, you don't see Spices, you don't see some of the Lolas, there's a lot of richness and depth to that era of motorsport that is sadly lacking in the racing sims. Chuck does hot laps. We're talking about you earlier, man. Since I know from your last Q&A that you've been doing sim racing for a long time, what was the moment that everything just kind of clicked and ended up with you making a channel? Also, what sims you've been playing along the way? I think I answered all the things playing along the way. What was the moment that everything clicked? You know what it was? After I started sim racing on the PC and really getting into mods, and there was a mod that came out and I can't remember what it was, but no one had made a video about it, and I thought I really need to make a video about this is great. And then I made it and it was terrible and I didn't release it, but it sort of spurred me on to start making some more. I've been watching people like Jimmy and Empty Box do it for a while, and I'd never really thought I want to get up there and race commentary videos, but there were a couple of mods that weren't being highlighted that I thought, well, why aren't people talking about this is great. Stephen O'Sullivan, did you ever get Automobilista running on your PC? No, sorry man, it's still broken. I can't find a fix for it. What editing program do you use to make your videos? Adobe Premiere. Any plans to show how you make Assetto Corsa cameras? Yeah, people keep asking me to show how I make the videos. I'm going to try. it's in my schedule for next week, and that makes no sense because I'm traveling to Belgium, so it's not going to happen then. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do a video or two on how I make my videos and get really meta. Let's what's going on in chat? What do you think of the drifting in sim racing and the niche community inside our niche community? I don't get drifting. No, I get the appeal of drifting. I just can't do it. It's I try, and I suspect it's because I haven't done any reading into what I'm supposed to do, and drift specific setups and that kind of thing. And I can drift cars around a corner, but none of the complex stuff. It's so cool. I was at Festival of Speed a couple of weekends ago, and watching the drifters was one of the best parts of it by far. I have such admiration for the car control those guys have, but I just can't do it due to lack of car controls. Are you planning to interview the creator of LA Canyons? Yeah, Phoenix. I think I saw Phoenix in the chat earlier, actually. I'd happily talk to him about the LA Canyons project if he's willing to jump on camera. Everyone go and harass Phoenix 77, the guy who made LA Canyons. We'll get him on Talking Sims. Is a review of Wreckfest likely? Yes, Gluten-Free Sim Race has been trying to sort that out, actually, so I think that's something that's going to happen. Am I worried about the long-term effects of VR on players' eyesight? Well, now I am. Hadn't thought about it. It does fit into the whole, you're sitting too near the TV, Chris, from my childhood. So... cool. Back to chat. Saw your guitars from the last Q&A. What music do you listen to, and what music do you like to play on the guitars? I am a bit of a punk fan. I always have been. And I guess the music of my youth was a lot of the mid-90s emo stuff, like Sunny Day Real Estate and later Jimmy Eat World and stuff like that. So that's my kind of jam. Favorite bands at the moment. My favorite album of this year is Morbid Stuff by Pup, which if you're into if you want a good poppy but abrasive punk album, I think it does the trick. But I've got such a broad musical taste. I really enjoy sort of a lot of ambient stuff, which probably comes across in the videos actually. Anyway, let's not get too bogged down on music lots there. Saw that at the Spark Classic regarding Group C1 from a lot of the Group C. Yeah, there's lots of Group C stuff. Leonard makes a really good point that Project Cars 2 has a load of Group C cars and hopes for Riser to fix them. Yeah, that was one of the big disappointments for me about Project Cars 2. A lot of the cars don't feel right to me. There are cars that feel fantastic in Project Cars 2 that I really love. I talked at length about how I love the Aston Martin DBR1 in that sim, and it's one of my favourite driving experiences in any racing sim ever. But the Group C cars they're a bit easy. They feel there's no danger. I don't know what it is. I don't want to get dragged down in that. I mirror what Leonard's saying, and hopefully Riser can make them a bit more exciting. How long have I been playing racing sims? Since 1992, AR. Cool. Back to the YouTube. There's something I've been wondering about. So many YouTube channels have crazy amounts of very expensive sim racing gear, direct drive wheels, multiple VR headsets, motion rigs, high-end PCs, ultra-wide monitors, not to mention camera software, mixers, lights, and other... yeah, that's me. Sorry. Yet seem to spend all their time sim racing and making videos with seemingly no need to go to a job every day. Yeah. So my question is, how do you or other YouTube streamers you might be acquainted with afford all this crazy expensive equipment? Do you have well-paying, low-demanding day jobs, sizable inheritance? Do you make that much money from YouTube? Right. My situation. I can't speak for anyone else. I don't think there are too many sim racing YouTubers that are making a full-time living from just the YouTube ad revenue and maybe Patreon. Jimmy is an outlier there, but you look at the numbers on his channel and you understand why he's an outlier. He's in a completely different plane of his existence. As I said, I can't speak for anyone else, but my YouTube ad revenues are, on a couple of £100 a month. I'm quite happy to just be open about that. It's not a massive amount of money, and I spend easily that on all the stupid bits that constantly end up needing to buy to make the videos happen. just the number of new I'm a guy that has thousands of different cables, having an audio engineering background and a photography background and a bit of filming stuff. I've got a lot of cables, but just the weekly saga in my life is discovering that I don't have a specific cable to connect something to something else. So that's where all of the YouTube ad revenue goes. It's just buying cables. I do have a day job. I work, my wife and I own a marketing firm. So I'm able to do what I'm doing here because I set my own agenda time-wise. And it's a difficult act to balance, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it. Just lots of 80-plus hour weeks. Cool. What do you reckon the Logitech Momo force feedback wheel is a good choice for someone getting into sim racing? I've never tried one. I couldn't answer that honestly, Wayne. Sorry. Had one back in 2004-05 when my PC sucked. I couldn't even get it to work. Really asking out of curiosity, since Simmer briefly touched on it with his cheap wheel video. Didn't really give his opinions. I think there's a lot to be said for going up to that just next price bracket. If you can afford a G29, you know, I don't know what they are in dollars, but I guess like around $300, £300 for a G29 or a T300 or something like that, particularly, or save a bit and go second hand. I think there's a lot to be said for doing that over some of those very entry level wheels. Will you stop using scripts and talk out of your head? No offense, it would just be way more natural. No, Marble 89, I won't, other than when I'm doing things that make sense to not be scripted. That's one of the things I do on my YouTube channel. I make scripted content. That's such a weird question to ask. I mean, do you watch television and yell at the actors for saying, "What are you reading from the script?" But do you think newsreaders should just ad-lib it? It's just a different way of presenting, man. So, yeah, I do get that from time to time, people asking, why don't you make it up? It's because I get really bored of watching YouTubers say, every 30 seconds and not really, and doing exactly what I'm doing now, not being able to formulate a thought before saying it out loud. If I freestyle a video, it's twice as long as if I script it. And to be honest with you, I think there is beauty in brevity. I think keeping things short and simple and to the point makes sense. Unlike this live stream, which has gone on forever. So thanks to everyone that stuck with me. Cool. Have I ever driven a GT3 car on track in real life? No, man. I would bite off my own arm to do that, which would be a poor move because driving the GT3 car would be pretty difficult. Matt Cool Group C feels awesome now. Yeah, I haven't tried that yet, Leonard. I'll definitely give that a go. What do I think of Dirt Rally 2.0 and its recycled content from DR1? I don't mind it so much. I know it's a contentious thing, but producing all of that content costs money. They've got to justify making this sim that's going to make less money than just making a Dirt 4 or Dirt 5 or whatever the continuation there would be, and makes way less money than the F1 series games. So they've got to monetize it somehow, and there are a finite number of pieces of rally content that people care about. So I'm a bit easier about it than most people are. On the face of it, it does kind of suck, particularly when you've owned it all before, but at least they're improving it, they're making it better, they're tightening it up. So there are improvements to all of the tracks. It doesn't feel like you're being sold the same thing twice. In fact, Leonard's saying the same thing there. It's you don't argue if the new title has Nürburgring again. Yeah, I agree completely, Leonard. That's the point. How many times have I now paid to drive around the Nürburgring if you include all of the console games and all the way back to GP Legends and things like that. I must have paid for the license for Nürburgring Nordschleife 15 times now, easily. With your interest in bands, background in audio engineering, have you ever produced a live show? Would you like to? Yeah, I did a bit of live sound in the mid-2000s, and I quite enjoyed it. I think I'd much prefer it nowadays with digital desks and live recall. Leonard's just popped up in the chat with 90% of F1 content's recycling and no one's screaming about that. I think you're being kind to Codemasters there. I think 90% is is a very low number. That's a good point. And you look at the FIFA games, you look at the NHL games and the NBA games, it's pretty much the same thing every year. So if you're happy to pay for it, great. If you're not, move on, I guess. Right, more from YouTube. I was wondering what your daily car and what your dream car in the sim and real worlds. Best regard from Turkey. My daily driver at the moment is a 2002 Mazda MX-5. I bought it about a month ago, and it's still running. So I'm pretty happy with that. I bought it so I can do some track stuff with it, but we sold my other car 18 months ago, because my wife and I both work from home now, so it didn't make sense to have two cars. And I got fed up of driving a Micra, which is a miserable driving experience. A really miserable driving experience. Go for Chucks. Hey man, I don't know if you're still in the chat. I saw you in there earlier, but Go for Chucks asked, do you think we need a good street driving or racing title? Yes, man. I as I said, I loved Project Gotham. Really enjoyed that, and you're getting that with Grid, aren't you? As the new Grid reboot should do a little bit of that, but I don't think it'd be all that good. Cool. Danny Vincent, Chris, you and Mike make some very, very valid points on the reasons why ACC might not be as popular as it arguably should be. Race Room's another title I feel doesn't really get shown the love it deserves. What do you think of the reasons behind it, and what could be done by Sector 3 to get more people driving the sim? That's a big question, Danny. I agree. I think Race Room should be more popular than it is. I think some people get put off by the business model. It doesn't bother me. I quite like the fact you can buy the content that you need or you want and ignore the rest of it. But, there is something about, picking up a Assetto Corsa or something in the Steam sale with all the DLC for like 15 quid that I guess is going to be appealing. I don't know what the total cost of buying Race Room, all of the content is. They do the sort of everything packs every now and again, which I bought a couple of years ago, but then I've had to buy everything since, and it does add up. So I think that's part of the reason, but I think it's also a sound business model for a smaller racing sim. I'd pose a question back is, does Race Room need to be any popular? I think it's got a pretty healthy player base. If they had to sacrifice their business model and the stability that brings to bring in more players, would that be a good thing? I don't know. So Metal Mike, I mentioned him earlier, and his very cool Burl guitar. Really, really nice. I was about to say it's a really nice piece of wood, but I heard myself saying it. And he said, I know you're a big real-life racing fan, so my question is there a series or motorsport that you never got into that you wish you did more? Also, what tracks are bucket list for motorsport? Okay, bucket list tracks that I've never been to. Bathurst, Mount Panorama would be absolute top of that list, and then getting to Sebring, and I've mentioned all of these before, Motorsport and Watkins Glen, and all of those great American tracks. I've been lucky enough to tick off a lot of the European ones over the last couple of years. The big one that's missing for me at the moment is Spa, but that'll be sorted shortly. As for the other question, is there a series that you wish you'd gotten into more? I wish I'd been born early enough to really appreciate Group C. I remember seeing very little bits of the end of it in the very early 90s, and I had a poster of the Jaguar XJR9 on my wall. But that's that was about where my knowledge of I had a Skelectric car as well, 962. So that's about where that experience of Group C ended. So I'd have loved to have seen and been involved or have an engagement with that in real time. Not that it would have been all that well televised, has to be said. So I'd have to drag my dad down to 1,000 kilometres of Brands Hatch or something. Where did we get to in chat? Not about recycling content, but removing content and charging the consumer to get it again in the UK. I don't mind recycling, I just mind the price, even though it's cheap. Yeah, it's a valid argument, and I totally see both sides. And Leonard's come back with the iRenting thing. So this is I think you could go around, and I think arguments on both sides are totally valid. And at the end of the day, it's just you pay your money, you take your choice sort of thing, isn't it? A weird question. How tall are you, and how do you fit in the MX-5? Yeah, good question. I am 6 foot pretty much exactly. And with the hard top, It's fine. I've got about an inch of clearance. With the soft top, my hair is pressed. I have to wear the hat, otherwise my hair is pressed against the soft top. With the top down, it's fine. Though I suspect you start to get bees stuck in your hair after a while. Any more from that? What's your opinion about truck racing? That did that come out today? The FIA truck racing sim, or is that tomorrow? I'm really keen to have a look at that. I used to watch a lot of truck racing on TV. It was on ITV years ago in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s. I used to really enjoy watching that. I don't know much about it these days, so I'm really keen to sort of get back into it. Racing Sim Tool says, regarding script comments earlier, I really enjoy the scripted content. Concise simplicity is beautiful in making video content. Can you talk about how you make the scripts? I think I'll make a point of the research and scripting stage in the how I make my video stuff, man. That's a good shout. Thank you. I was hoping it'd be sim physics, but more arcade makes sense from a business point of view. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I haven't given it a drive yet, so we shall see how that looks. I'm just really keen to do some truck racing, even if it is a bit simcade. I don't like that term. I've said that before, but even if it is a bit simcade, I think it'll be good fun, and that's important. I really, one of my favourite games to play at the moment is Wreckfest. Physics are reasonable, but they're not. It's not R-Factor 2, is it? So. As you posted this just before the Chris Hay community race, here's a start of a 10. If you could create a super sim, which elements from each of the current crop of PC console titles would you pick? Sorry, Sim Contender. Like 4 other people asked that question. I've answered it too many times now. What's your favourite mod for AC? It is easily the Racing Studio GT1 pack, and specifically, I really like the Celine. You probably get that if you pay attention into some of the weird background stuff in videos. You'll see that the non-AI driven car more often than not, when that content's featured, is the Celine. Mods and games and sims with varying content mean almost anything can be driven anywhere virtually. If you had real life chance to spend the day at a track of your choice with a single car of your choice, what would it be? I'd have to go for an AMG GT3 on the Nordschleife 24 layout. Nürburgring 24 layout. Sorry. Yeah, that would be great, but I'm still gonna have to go for the Porsche 962, and you know what, I just don't care where I drive it. Anywhere they would let me, if they just let me just drive it down the pit lane, not even that, just let me drive it from the truck to the, in fact they can push me when they're wheeling it from the truck to the back of the garage for when a real driver gets in and do it. That'd be enough for me. I'd be happy with that. Can you use your connections and get someone to create a track plugin for the Shenandoah course at Summit Point Motorsport Park? Seriously, the industry seems to ignore amateur motorsport participants. The problem you've got there is because it's at Summit Point, there is a licensing issue there, and licensing means that it's got to be monetized, which means there's got to be enough people to actually pay for the content. I certainly don't have the connections to influence anyone into making a new piece of content. If I did, we'd all be driving the Group C simulator. Instead, we get a bunch of F1 or GT3, some other unrealistic car or tracks that don't exist anymore or never did exist. Well, yeah, that's the problem. That sells, man. That's that's why the music charts are the way they are. That's why we get constant superhero reboot movies and RoboCop 11 rather than new original content. Is because it's safe, it's easy, it sells. If you can demonstrate that niche content will sell well, then that's great. I mean, I think Phoenix did a great job with LA Canyons, and that's been one of the most popular Assetto Corsa mods over the track mods over the last year or so. But would it have been popular if it was payware? Could Kunos have released that? Though I don't know the answer to that. I'm just posing that as a hypothetical. I think we have reached the end of it. I'm going to get the last one out the way with from here, and then we'll just have a bit of interaction with chat, I guess. Jeff Bieber, who I assume is closely related. My question is, do you know where you will spend eternity? This is a weird question. Jesus is the way... Okay, this is becoming a statement, isn't it? I'll answer the question first. Do I know where I will spend eternity? Well, I think it's going to be on this live stream answering questions. Jesus is the way of truth and life, and no man comes to the Father but through him. His blood was shed on the cross to cleanse from all your sins, and all you have to believe in him, and you will be saved. Well, that's comforting. Moving on. I don't really do politics or religion on this channel. I think we get bombarded with messages about all sorts of stuff like that everywhere else. So anytime anyone asks me about Brexit or Donald Trump or religion or anything like that, I'm always going to say, yeah, go somewhere else. Why do you care what I think about that kind of thing? I don't know about that stuff. Neither do you. No one does. We just guys. It's fun to have those conversations over a pint sometimes, but don't ask a sim racing YouTuber what about US foreign policy. It's not happening. Right. Let's go back to chat, because I think the questions there are going to be less difficult. Cool. Where did we get to? Hearing the trucks are arcade as well. Yeah, I don't mind that gluten free. I think it's the kind of game that if the physics aren't perfect but it's fun, it'll get a lot of playtime from me. AMG is such a controlled ride. I love it. What are we talking about? Oh, the AMG GT3. Just adding the bills, I paid $350 for iRacing in the last 9 months, and now I don't like it. That's the problem, Leonard. I end up going through little pockets of playing iRacing really intensively and then going away from it for a few months because of the nature of the channel. So I think my yearly subscription to iRacing is really a really poor investment. I might have to start going back to monthly and dipping in and out when I actually use it. But yeah, don't start. If you start counting how much you've spent on it, it really does change the equation. Sorry for showing up late. I was driving the V12 FR90 earlier. You know what, dude? I think if you're gonna miss something, then that's a great car to be driving to miss it. The internet is a really weird place. Yeah, that's what I've been getting tonight. Best question of the night. Was it a question, gluten free? I felt like it was more of a statement. The first part about where you'll spend eternity. Do you know where you'll spend eternity? Not do you have an idea? Do you think? It's do you know where you'll spend eternity? So I'm not that certain about what I want for breakfast tomorrow, let alone any of the big questions. The racing god's the only religion you need here, Chris. Very true. Jesus says he was the first pension salesman. What are your thoughts on DTM? I haven't been watching the DTM for the last couple of years, man. I just... Not because I dislike it. I really love every bit of DTM I catch, but it's just time. Trying to keep up with so many motorsport series. I've sort of dipped out of DTM, but I'm really interested in catching the crossover events with the Super GT later this year. I think that's going to be really great. It's going to be unmissable stuff. BCW, talking about deep subjects, your video on the conception of terms like simcade, hardcore, etc. is my favourite video and exactly what the community needed. Thanks, man. I knew that was going to be contentious. It was something we talk about a lot, and I wanted to sort of tackle in a sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek way. But yeah, I just think we're all just driving pretend race cars, and sometimes it pays us to sort of take a step back and say, what we're doing is ridiculous. Let's not just be too serious about it. What are your thoughts on the new Porsche 911 RSR and the new exhaust? I only got to hear it in the wet at Goodwood, Gustav, but I'm on record as thinking the previous Porsche 911 RSR is the best current racing car in terms of sound. And I'm a bit concerned about the new one. I'll wait until we get to hear it thrashing around a track, not, turned down in the lowest engine mode at Goodwood in the wet. So I can try and be optimistic about that. We don't have a DeLorean, so we can't travel to the future to answer Jeff's questions. Yeah, that's a fair point. You don't get any better price than on Black Friday anyway. Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Leonard. I should probably re-up on Black Friday. I think mine's due in December, so... Smart moves. Question, why is it that everyone's clamouring for anything other than GT3s in league racing, but if you do a league with unusual cars then no one shows up? Yep, well, we run community races and we run into that problem all the time. I was speaking to Bram from Race Department and Paul Jeffrey about this very subject, because obviously they run dozens of races every week, and the thing they keep coming back to is, yeah, you throw on a Mini or an MX-5 or a car like that, and they'll be running 2 or 3 servers. Someone will come along and be like, oh yeah, I want to do 90s GT1 cars or Group C or this, that and the other. And they might get one race where they get a decent attendance, but after that it just dies off. The reality is that most people aren't good enough at driving those cars. We did a race with Group C cars on the Discord, and around Spa, I think there was a disparity of lap times of about 15 seconds between the fast guys and the slowest. And that's huge. I mean, they're tough cars to drive, and it takes a lot to set them up because the stock setups are unusable on a lot of that type of car as well. So you end up with this huge disparity. You end up with people not really enjoying it as much, which is a shame because I'm always going to be the guy that wants to drive 90s Formula 1 cars or 1960s sports cars or this, that and the other, but unless you've got a really like-minded group of people, like the vintage Formula 1 guys or whatever, that all get together, they all have their same passion project interest, and they all form their league, and it's the same group of people race every week. I just don't think it's that practical. I mean, look at the Camel GT series on iRacing. That only the Audi 90 Quattro and the Nissan GTP are 2 legendary cars, just incredible cars. And it only goes official like once a week. It's certainly not just related to games like Race Room and Assetto Corsa anyway. Slightly random. I'm expecting more negative comment. But have I ever played Train Sim? Yeah, I played a bit of Microsoft Train Sim when that came out. And then Train Simulator, whatever it's called, the yearly one. I don't think they've changed the name. It keeps updating it. It's in my Steam library. Train, yeah, good. Yeah, no, I played it a little bit. It's not really my thing. I like all sorts of sims. I'll buy any sim just because it's like, oh yeah, I wonder what it is like to drive a combine harvester. Or but nothing grabs me in the same way racing sims do. Flight sims a little bit, but I don't mind the new RSR not screaming as much. I don't like it not sounding like the other flat six they produced. It sounded like the Cup car or the 936. It'd be great. I see. The thing about the RSR is that it was screaming and hard. At Le Mans this year, just being able to hear that 911 RSR go past with 5 other cars, and you can still hear the 911, when it's a mile and a half away. That's a special thing, and it'd be a shame that if that's missing. How AMS is so praised with its official content being so specific. Because I think the content's just really good. It drives really well. It's really cleanly put together, and the core of the engines just works really well. What's your favourite game? Bethesda said you've been giving Fallout New Vegas some hours. I really liked Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I put a lot of time into that, which is a long time ago now. And yeah, my favourite Fallout game was New Vegas. I think just because it was a little bit richer than 3 and 4 were. Difficult cars need a league. Doesn't even work in iRace. Yeah, completely agree, Leonard. You're obviously a very busy man. How many hours a day do you get to sit in the rig for fun? Yeah, that's unfair. That's a tough question, Mark. I've been trying to force myself just to do sort of 20 minutes of racing just before I do anything in the morning, just where I switch on a sim and I do 5 or 10 laps in a car against the AI in a track just for a bit of fun, because I haven't been doing a lot of that recently. So the answer is probably not very much. It was definitely better than the old car. Definitely better with the old car. We'll have to see, Gustav. I'm not negative about the new 911. We'll see what it sounds like in reality. And the flight sims and combat flight sims have a problem with no simcade acting like a bridge for new players. Yeah, tough barrier to entry on some of those titles, certainly. Agree, the community needs to be more inclusive, not exclusive. IMO, you're right. Every sim has its place. Yeah, I think simcade titles have gotten a lot closer to simulator titles over the years. And I think, if you compare the physics in GT Sport to Gran Turismo 2 or 3 or something. I'm just picking arbitrary titles now. The gap between Gran Turismo 2 and GTR or something, about, I guess they were a similar sort of time period, was huge in terms of physics. But the gap between GT Sport and iRacing or Project Cars 2 or whatever is much smaller now. So, having arbitrary distinctions becomes, I mean, it's sort of, I think I covered it in the video, it's useful for linguistic terms. If I say Simcade, you all know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, if you're not in our little club, it does sound a bit arsey. What's your take on the F1 revival, given we've had 2 decent races, Austria, UK? Yeah, F1 always goes through these sort of peaks and troughs, I think. We had a couple of bad races and that particularly awful one at Paul Ricard. Why the hell do they use the chicane in the middle of the Mistral? It makes no sense to me. It can't be a safety thing because they're at VMAX by the time they hit senior anyway. So, yeah, maybe they assumed the putting the chicane in would create more overtaking. Yeah, I think my take is that the British Grand Prix was an absolute classic. The Austrian Grand Prix was decent. I don't know what more to say. The next one will probably be rubbish. Where are we next, actually? I've lost the plot. It used to always be the German Grand Prix that followed, and I'm not sure that it is now. I'm a bit lost. Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion, other than, did everyone see they've just announced that they're going to be going for underfloor aero for 2021 road, because they're going to have tunnels. Finally, almost looking like they're seeing sense that, maybe generating some of that aero from the floor rather than lots of complicated winglets and the like on top of the body might make a lot more sense, like every other series has known for a long time and IndyCar has been doing a really great job with. Any plans for sim racing YouTube race event? Feel like an event where all the best sim racing YouTubers will be really fun and entertaining to watch. Yeah, that sounds really fun. I think, honestly, the best place to do that would be at Sim Racing Expo, because there'll be a bunch of us there, and whoever wants to put it on. A bunch of us got together at Paul Ricard after a couple of beers and had a go on the Sims there, and it wasn't very productive. A note on difficult cars. Well, none of us was perfect either. It was Monza we all had our struggles with. From the yeah, referencing our race from last night, our community race, where I think a couple of us got together a little bit at the first chicane, and it was Monza. This happens. New tyre regs for 2021 are going to be pretty huge, I think. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. 2021 has the prospect of having a proper shake-up in the same way that 2009 did, and in the same way that 1994 did. I think it's big. It's one of those big enough shifts in the concept that maybe Mercedes won't just get it right. Although it's hard to imagine. It's always hard to imagine. But then again, it was hard to imagine in 2009 that you wouldn't be seeing Ferrari and McLaren battle at the front. But we didn't. So anyway, V12 is so much fun. You have to get used to doing four-wheel slides through the corners. Actually, yeah, the FR90's a great car, man. Anyway, guys, I think we've got to the end of the questions. I think we're struggling for questions in the chat. I don't know how long this has been running. Does it tell you how long it's been running? Probably somewhere. I'm not really good at this streaming thing. So I started at 7:30. It's now 9:30. We've been going for a couple of hours. I think I should, first of all, remember that I've got a bottle of water, because that makes life easier. But what I was actually going to say is I think it's time to wrap things up. So thank you to everyone that came and hung out with me tonight, asked questions, and generally had a bit of fun in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone that gets involved in the comments on YouTube and likes the videos and shares them and has subscribed and continues to watch the content. Without you guys, and I know this is corny, without you guys, I wouldn't still be doing this. There is a reward for me that comes with seeing thousands of people watching these videos. I know it's kind of a bit narcissistic, but if only 3 people were watching every time, I probably wouldn't be putting out videos still. There's a definite sort of feedback mechanism there, and I really genuinely appreciate that you guys take time out of your lives to watch some stupid 5 or 10 minute video I make about pretend racing cars. I think that's totally mad, but it's the coolest thing in the world for me. So absolutely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. And I'm gonna wrap things up there. So guys, I don't know where the button is to turn all of this off, so thank you so much for hanging out.